No, it's an awesome record, Old Man by Neil Young. Like I've never
Yeah,
heard the song before. I'm really not familiar, but it's an awesome record. I was
yeah.
making fried green tomatoes this morning for my daughter. That's like one of her favorite breakfast items, and I've been promising her I was gonna make some. The bell peppers went bad. I usually do like a bell pepper sauce with goat cheese.
Yeah.
Um, but I'm in the kitchen making the fried green tomatoes, and like what I really like to do is like the days that we have our podcast,
Hmm.
I'm usually making breakfast or lunch for my daughter, and
Right.
I usually like to play the music in the kitchen. You know what I mean? That's kind of how I was raised.
Hmm.
Like my mom, when they used to cook and stuff, they used to play music in the kitchen.
Right.
I guess I kind of got that from them. I'm the same way. But I usually like, what I mean, on the weekends when we're about to do a show, I'll play whatever the song it is that's on your
Mhm.
side. Like I'll just put it on repeat. And I was like, this song is beautiful. I was like, it's perfect for like a Saturday morning, like
Yeah.
cooking breakfast, reflective. The songwriting and the melody is high level.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, that whole record, I don't know if you listen to all of Harvest yet. Like the Harvest is the album that it comes from. It's all really, really good stuff. It's one of the great folk rock albums
I
that's ever
got your
been.
I, I got your message, but I was beat, and I just
It's fine. There's no like pressure. I was just offering it as a suggestion
no,
if
no, no.
that was like a thing that
I'm
yeah.
going to give it some run. I am.
Do what?
That's the thing. Neil Young is, but never have listened to his music. So it's
Hmm.
like definitely know the name, do not know the artist, and that was a very nice introduction to him.
Yeah. And he's I picked him for lots of reasons. Obviously, we're here to at least in part celebrate Nas and celebrate the release of KD3. This we're recording this on the morning of what's this, the 12th? Yeah,
Yes,
November
11,
12th.
12.
So I wanted to pick a song like given your connections with Nas's camp, I feel like he's more likely to hear this than perhaps some of the other ones that we've done. And I want him to be honored by the comparison too. Like, and the ones we've done with his songs so far are comparing him or comparing songs to Paul Simon and Neil Young, who are widely regarded as two of the greatest songwriters of the 20th century. So, like, I wanted, and I definitely see him as part of that like echelon of writers.
That is one thing that I noticed about the old man song initially. I'm like, okay, I was like, so he's a great songwriter, and that's
Mhm.
what made Andrew think about Neil Young in reference to Nas. So I did catch that immediately. I immediately caught the level of songwriting. That's why I was like, oh no,
Yeah,
it was a high level. I was like, immediately, I'm like, okay, he's a writer.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I wouldn't do Nas any other way. Like that's he deserves to have like I know you all know according to hip hop community knows that he is a great songwriter, but I don't know that he is viewed in the wider culture on the level that perhaps he should be.
Right.
So I want to make sure he's getting comps with people who are also widely recognized as being on
Yeah.
that
The
top
people
level.
who are lauded as writers is who you want to compare
Yeah,
him to or
yeah,
juxtapose the songs with. No,
yeah.
no, totally understood. Um, which way do you want to go, or where do you want to start?
I don't know. I've gone back and forth about which way makes the most sense, and I think this is an example I think of two songs we're doing for. Well, I didn't say this, I guess, at the beginning. We're doing Neil Young's song "Old Man" and Nas's brand new song "Once a Man, Twice a Child" from KD3. Um, and the songs kind of talk to each other. I
Mm-hmm.
think like
Mm-hmm.
they're not opposite perspectives exactly, but one's a young man. The Neil Young song's a young man talking to an older one, and Nas's is kind of in the middle. Like he is kind of he is older. I mean, Neil Young was like 24. He says it in the song. He was 24 when he wrote the song.
Yeah.
And Nas's was he's what late 40s, right?
He's literally 49, I believe. He's 50 next year.
Yeah. So he's twice the age, but he's also like in his song is taking advice or is remembering advice that he has been given by older people and passing that along to younger people. So I mean the songs talk to each other. So I think we could go either direction.
Okay. We can start with the newer song if you want. We can start with Nas because the
Okay.
song is newer and more recent. I think one thing, and this is I don't know how familiar you are with Tupac's catalog. I mean, I
Hmm.
know you know who Tupac is.
Well,
I'm
clearly,
just not sure how familiar you are with his catalog, especially the earlier portions of his catalog.
mm,
This
not
song,
terribly.
okay. Well, this song, if you're like a hip hop fan, the style and the feel, and even some of the cadence that he uses is actually his old style, but it's not even his old style. It's really more a Tupac take. Like do you know how he took Eminem's flow and
Hmm.
started off on Ghetto Reporter?
Yeah, da
Well,
da
this,
da 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 da. Yeah, sure.
yeah, well, this is actually Tupac's flow that he took on this song,
That
and
makes
Tupac
me, I
delivered.
can't explain to you how happy that makes me because there's a note right here that says, whose flow is this question mark? You said on, according to hip hop, that he uses multiple cadences on different songs. This feels like Pac to me.
This is Pac.
So,
This
so I'm not completely like,
no,
I
this
mean,
is
it's got the
totally.
synths in it and everything. Like, I mean, it's got,
He he doesn't have the depth in his voice. His voice is piercing. Pac's voice has depth. So you
yeah,
have to imagine some of these bars getting delivered with the depth. Strong motherfucker when you're young.
yeah. It sounds like that kind, a kind of thing that
Sounds
he
like
would say.
Pac. Yes. So he's tapping in, and I told people this about the album. My take on the album is that the Nas that you're hearing on this album is the Nas before Illmatic. Is how
Okay.
you have to look at it in terms of the thoughts, in terms of the approach. And this would fall right in line because this is straight out of 92, 93, 94 Tupac book.
Okay.
Like the theme too.
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking. This is, I was thinking that because one of the ways that I process these songs is I have a playlist with the two songs that are just like the two songs we're about to do, and I play them on loop in the car while I'm driving around too, and just
Mm-hmm.
listen to them over and over. And Nas is obviously a supreme lyricist. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
um, this is not his most intricately lyrical song. Like he has plenty of other more
Mm-hmm.
intricately lyrical songs, and that's not a knock on the song. It's just not what this one is,
No, that's
and
not.
which is
Yeah,
also a Pac thing too, right? Like he is a great
correct.
lyricist and has great messages, but the he is not as intricate as um it's not as intricate as Nas can be, I guess is what I want
Correct.
to say.
Correct. He is more of an in your face writer than
Yeah.
Nas is. Nas can be an in your face writer like this record is,
Hmm.
but this is more in the vein. And when I'm saying this like he did this respectfully. It's
Yeah.
like this is one of those things that it's like I think you have to be a fan of hip hop or just
Hmm.
know music really well to catch it,
Yeah.
which is one of the
It's an
beautiful.
honoring thing.
It's an honoring thing. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely. Um, even some of like literally how he frames these words. Hot headed as a youngster, confronted, I might unload. Like that's pop. Like
Hmm.
imagine hot headed as a youngster,
Yeah.
confronted, might unload. That yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. And that's what I mean about how brilliant he is on this album. Oh, he doesn't just have his flow down. He has all the other great MCs flow down too. It's like no, he can do M's flow, he can do Pac's flow, and so when he's making this record and he's hearing this beat, because even beat wise, it
Hmm.
kind of feels kind of
It's
nostalgic,
that
like
kind of
yeah,
West Coast feel.
yeah,
Yeah.
that West Coast. It sounds like something that a West Coast producer would have made about 92, 93.
Hmm.
And so he's just showing you that as an MC, he's in a really special place. But like most records with Nas, there is a message, and
Hmm.
and I think the message of this one is to really like enjoy the life that you have now while you're living it, because like he said, like every day is the youngest day that you'll ever be.
Right.
And so the message of the song is like, is it's you can see yourself aging,
Hmm.
but don't be depressed about the aging. Like enjoy those memories as they're passing by.
That's the first line he says when he's just speaking instead of rapping. Like at the very beginning, he says some. I'm going to paraphrase it, but he says something to the effect of, "You're if you're lucky, you'll get old."
Yeah,
Like that's because a lot of people don't make it that far.
right. That's
Yeah.
that's the embracing, and that's like the kind of uplifting part on here. So when he talks about the things that he used to do. And I guess
Mhm.
that's where you got Neil Young from, because it's like, well, Neil Young in his record is 24.
Mhm.
Nas on this record is talking about the things that he was doing circa the age of being about 24.
Right. So they're speaking to each other is what they're doing.
Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
speaking to each other,
metaphorically speaking.
like, and he speaks to, and he speaks to some of the things that were going on. He's like, when he says, live while you get the strength to, health you should tend to,
Hmm.
you know, like, as in, like, you're not just going to get old by not paying attention and taking care of yourself either.
Right.
So there are messages about like self-care and
Hmm.
self-awareness
Yep.
in this song as well, which is typical Nas, which is typical Tupac. And I want to say something that I've kind of and my D and I on According to Hip Hop have been talking about this as well. Well, really, Nas is closer, should be closer compared to Tupac than he ever should really be to Jay or Big
Okay.
in one of these records. Or why? Because it's like, well, he's more content driven
Hmm.
and with a message and with a point and a theme, and there's a lot of uplifting things said
Hmm.
within the lines. And
Yep.
that's not to say that Big and Jay
Right.
haven't said positive things, but it doesn't feel as socially consciously aware
Hmm.
and pro-black in the theme and the motif of it the way Tupac and Nas frame it.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
to be honest with you, it's like we kind of pick what we want our heroes to do in hip hop, sometimes to a fault, because that's something that has actually hurt Nas. And so it's like, well, we really don't want to hear Jay and Big kick knowledge as much as we want to hear Nas and Pac kick it either. You get what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah. Because it's again, like you said, it's not that the J and Big are incapable of doing
Yeah, not
that.
like they haven't.
Clearly, they can.
I think the chorus is where I really hear the Tupac though.
Hmm.
Just
Oh
truthfully
yeah.
strong motherfucker when you're young. I ducked a razor, ducked some punches, even ducked a gun.
Gone. Yep.
Right. But then when you think about it, it's like, well, that sounds like Tupac, but part of what makes Pac pop is that his story.
Hmm.
He's very modern day Malcolm in the sense is that the things that happened to Pac have happened to a lot of black men.
Right.
And so the relatability is there. Well, it's like, well, I might, like Andrew myself, I've been harassed by the police on multiple occasions. It's like, well, so is Pac. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so it's like when you see those things, it's like, oh, well, you relate. It's like, oh, well, I feel like he got treated unfairly by the criminal justice system. It's like, oh, well, that's happened to me, you
Yeah.
know?
And
And so
and
even
so,
though
so it's
he
a
was a star,
universal. I don't want to be like it's a universal experience, but like he's talking about something that and to me, from looking at it from the outside, it's kind of like if it can happen to somebody like that, then it can happen to anybody too, right? And like somebody who's as wealthy and connected and like all those kind of things. If it can happen to him, then it can happen to whoever.
so there's a relatability that comes with that. But here's
Mhm.
like the genius with Nas, and here is why he's our best writer. Well, we know Nas was a childhood prodigy as a
Right.
writer and as an MC. And so his ability to digress, I don't even want to say digress. I think it's transition is a better word. To
Hmm.
transition into this form of rapping and writing style
Hmm.
on a whim,
Just
as
because he
in
can.
like as in at will, as in he could write this song way more lyrically
Hmm.
and intricately with the
Oh,
same
sure.
message if he wanted to.
Hmm.
So the fact that he can literally on a whim take his writing style like to this transition into this nostalgic piece and point in time is part of why I called him hip hop's greatest writer last
That
night.
makes
It's
sense.
very Toni Morrison like.
Yeah.
Andrew, the ability of him to just transition from character and story and frame it and put it back together for you at the end. It's very Toni Morrison like.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's beautiful.
that's what I mean. Like he's that. It's like the same way that it's like you can watch her. She can get extremely wordy with her prose intentionally
Oh
if
yeah.
she chooses
If
to.
she wants to, yes. If she's doing
Yes,
it to make a point. Yeah.
and it's usually to make a point. But she can also just kind of use the simple everyday words that we
Yep.
all use, like strong motherfucker when you're young. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? Well, she knows how to make that work too. He's very much, and that's what I mean. Is like when you pick the Neil Young song and I heard the right, and it's like, yeah, well, that's how we need to talk about him when we talk about him, which is what I've been talking about. It's like,
Right.
oh no, we need to be talking about Toni Morrison and Tupac
Yeah.
and
This.
Neil Young and Paul Simon, right? Because he's that kind of writer. He's not a
Mhm.
regular
No, he
writer.
is not at all.
He's
Like,
not a regular
uh,
writer.
yeah.
One of the things about not being a regular writer is being able to write regular shit people relate to.
Yep. Yeah.
Right.
And that's the genius is or one of the many geniuses is I mean you see this in Neil Young's song too actually that just because you have all the words doesn't mean you have to use them all the time. And because you have a massive vocabulary and can do like super 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 intricate things doesn't mean that the song is always best served by you being as intricate as possible. And you can scale it back to make your point um more clearly if you want to.
Yeah, I think, and this is what about the relatability even too. And see, so Nas speaks to a class of writer and a class of thought too. Like he speaks to us, Andrew, on the English and on the literary and on
Hmm.
the intelligence level, where we can see him doing all those things. And it's like, ah, so he checks boxes in certain circles when he makes records like this, like the literary and the intelligent rhetoric circles. Because think about this. You and I both, we're not as wordy as I remember us in high school,
No.
but we had more of a point to prove, didn't we?
Yeah. You're showing
Yeah,
off, right? And that's
right.
what
We
we've
were
talked about
like, no, no, no.
some
I have
other.
I have command of these big words. I know exactly how to use them and where to use them and when to use them. Look at me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, when you got it and when you're older, it's like when you kind of don't got to do that to get the point across too, because you've
Right.
kind of found other ways to navigate. And quite frankly, you find the time and the space and the appropriate places to use those words. Like I use most of my big words in jest now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why I do it, especially in the classroom too. Um,
Yeah.
and and it actually that's a perfect like metaphor for like because when we met, we were on newspaper staff at West Charlotte High School, and but we were also the youngest members of the newspaper
Yeah.
staff.
Yeah.
We were sophomores, and most of the members were seniors,
No,
and
almost. They were like
yeah,
three
yeah,
juniors.
like you said, almost all of them were seniors, and they'd all known each other's in AG since they were like little kids in Piedmont and
Right.
whatever. Um, so there was at some level something to prove to them that we like belong there, like
Right. Right.
um,
Right.
and yeah, and Nas is in the same place now as we seem to be with our language, which is there's not you don't have to prove anything to anybody. We've already there's no need. There's no need,
Right.
and we can turn it off. We turn it on if we need to, but like there's not a reason
Right.
to particularly.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. It's funny. It's like, and you know this too. People in your family probably say this too. It's like, well, I'm the person people want to speak now, and it's like now I don't feel like talking.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and this is what. But that goes to the theme of this song, which is just like, well, you know, all those things that you love to do.
Hmm.
Well, you're not going to be able to do them the same when you're older anyway. Some of it is just the attrition of life. Some of it is just like your choices. It's like, oh no, like I know that if we have a function, I'm speaking at the family function. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
oh no, I used to live for that moment. And now it's like,
Uh,
we get together so I can
yeah.
deliver this
Yeah.
message.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's cool, family, but you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But
Sure.
that's one of those things that come with age and this message. This is what I mean about how it connects. Oh, it speaks to so many points of your life. Like, I'll tell you what, I don't know if you're this way, but I really don't follow the NBA and the NFL and the Major League Baseball season like I used to, Andrew.
No,
Like,
definitely
I
not.
keep up, but I really don't follow it like I used to until it's like playoff time.
Right.
Right. When it gets to be the end of the season and things are starting to separate themselves. I mean, as a Braves fan, I didn't even realize the Phillies were like really in the wild card like that because I was just concerned with us and the Mets because
Hmm.
I really don't pay attention like that. Then
Right.
I'm like, make the playoffs. I'm like, I didn't even know they still had a team.
Sorry, Philly.
I'm not sorry.
He's not. No.
Braves.
Like no, I've been a Cubs. I've been a Cubs fan for since I was like 5 years old. So like, I don't. But my family are all Braves fans, so I have that history
But
too.
what I'm saying is that when I was younger, oh, I follow the National League East almost every day during the
Hmm.
week
Oh,
during
me too.
baseball.
We come home and watch game on TV. Yeah,
Right. Watch the
every
game
day.
on TV, look at it in the newspaper,
Yep.
Sports Center ticker line, be like, hold on, did the Phillies win? Did the Expos/Nationals win?
Yeah.
And so now it's like, where they at? I was like, oh, it's game 140. It's like, okay, what's going on? You
Yeah.
know, that's the age thing. This record speaks to all those moments in life when you have the energy and the tenacity as a younger man that you're not going to have as an older man. You know what I
You got
mean?
to pick you got to pick your spots. I mean, it's just like we're talking about with the language. You're picking your spots, right? Like that's the other reason I love that opening thing too. Is like I'm not old, and we're not that old, but like I'm old enough to feel like I can't go out or stay up super late without feeling the effects for a couple days. Like, just it's a thing that you have to accept in a way that you perhaps did not have to in your younger years.
No, it's true. Like I'll tell you what. I mean, it was my birthday last month. I went out. A lot of my friends took me out, and I'll tell you what. Every time I had more than two drinks, Andrew, oh, I felt it. And I told
Mhm.
myself, and this is why you're on a two-drink minimum. It's like it's not because you can't. It's not because you don't want to. It's because of what it's going to do to you when you have more than two and stay out late at the age that I'm at. It's just the reality of the
It'll
matter.
chew you up, man. Yeah.
It is. It's like two drinks, be in the house by two. If those two things don't happen, then that's like losing 2 days.
Yeah, no, seriously, it's like being like having jet lag almost. Like I mean, it's that kind
I
of
mean,
feeling.
even from doing the KD3 streaming release party and
Hmm.
being up till 4, and then having to get up with my daughter at 6:30, you know, and then quite frankly, strong arming a lot of media factions on Twitter for
Yeah,
about 4 hours in the morning before work, and then getting ready for work, and then going to work, and you get what I'm saying? It's
and
just
then
like
coming back and doing a 4 hour show and whatever.
right,
Or,
right, right. So yeah, it's like no, I feel all of that. And think about this: I didn't drink.
yeah, you
Like
stayed up.
I had two
And
glasses.
you were working the whole time too. Like
I
you
had
were
2 glasses of wine during the streaming party. I didn't even finish the second glass. It was I finished half of the second glass because I was beat and my eyes were so weak. See, I was on the station here, so y'all didn't see my eyes were so weak they
right.
weren't starting. I was like sitting in front of it down here like this.
Yeah,
And I was like, man, I was like, I might pass out if I finish this wine. And that was like, that's what I mean. It's
you're
like
gonna be sleep on the microphone. Yep.
right. So you can't do the same things when you're older, and it's a great and it's actually a great message. And I think this is this is one of those moments to like that lets you know that he's in a grown up place. Hip hop is in a grown up place, and so are his fans. Like he's going on
Yeah.
50, but it's like he talked about at the beginning of his albums where it's like, well, he has 60, 50, and
And
40-year
16.
old and 16. And then I thought about it, it's like, he's right. He does. I'm 41. My daughter's 15.
Hmm.
You feel what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's like I know he has factions of fans like from the classic hip hop era before him and from his era. So he
Yep.
has that 60, 50, 40 down to 16 that he's talking about. That's grown up talk. That's that Mick Jagger, Rolling Stones type of like longevity to
Hmm.
like
One of
musically.
the things that's the hardest to do, and one of the things I laud him the most for is because we've seen lots of other, both MCs and other musicians from the rock and roll world try and fail at this too, is to be able to talk as an older, I mean, I don't want to call him old, but like as a not 20-year old, like be able to talk in your 40s and 50s about um life in a way that is still fresh and still compelling and not like just rehashing shit you did when you were 20. Like
Well,
it's hard to do that.
here's what I mean. It's kind of funny. He a lot of people have told me this, like, I know a lot of people who are half my age,
Hmm.
Andrew, and part of the reason why I have relationships with them is like, well, they're like, and they tell me this all the time. They're like, well, you're not bitter, like you're still cool, Coop. You know what
Yep.
I'm saying? Like you're still kind of like you still kind of get it. And Nas has that working for him
Yep.
too. Kind of has an elder statesman status,
Hmm.
but he kind of has his pulse on it and knows what's going on. That's what I mean. Is it's like, well, it comes different ways from different people, but
Hmm.
he's one of those elder statesmen. It's like, oh, he's not get off my lawn with it. You feel
No,
what I'm saying?
no, not at all. And you don't get that in any of this record at all.
Right. It doesn't come off like get off.
This particular one and the whole album is not like that at all.
Right. Well, that's because even though he's elder statesman and the talk has grown up, it's still cool. Like he's
Yeah.
still cool, and you can tell he's not. he's not forcing any of these things upon you
No.
that he's kicking to you. And it's like that's part of it too. And that is part of it in real life and in real time. You got to let people like do what you do. Like this is no lie. Today, when I go to work, and I no lie, one of my 21-year-old homegirls is coming to the bar with her mother. And that's what I mean about I have those relationships where it's
Hmm.
like she hit me up and she was like, yo, she was like, I'm gonna come sit at your bar with my moms today. You know what I mean? But I don't know mom, I know daughter, but it's like
Yeah.
me and her cool like that because it's like I'm not one of them bitter old dudes and I'm not one of them creepy old dudes either.
Right.
Right. And she's like, no, 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 Coop is cool. He gets it. Like, you know, and people fuck with you like that. And that's kind of the reason why people fuck with Nas from the younger generation, too. It's like, no, no, no. He's a cool old guy. It's like, you got to think about it. He's wealthy. He's been single or had bachelor status for a long time
Hmm.
now. You know what I'm saying? He has
Yeah.
an actual lifestyle that a lot of people actually want. And so when he is actually stepping back and reflecting, it's different. This isn't the, not to be funny, this isn't the married guy with 3 kids reflecting.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
different when the married guy with 3 kids is reflecting. It's like, oh, are you missing something over there? It's like, no, no, no. Nas is reflecting like from a different place. You know what I mean? He might have
Yeah.
come out of a board meeting and reflected. He's not coming like out of the house with 3 children and a wife reflecting. And so
Mm.
those kind of like real life moments affect the song making too. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like because this is somebody who has every reason to enjoy the now, telling you to enjoy the now. It hits different.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh no, 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 that's what he's doing. It's like I do need to get like that.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, but that's about all I had for it. I mean, obviously the song's only been out for,
A day
roughly a
and a
day.
half or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
So
I did want to, I was almost going to jump in earlier and say this when we were talking about the literary devices. I want to talk really, really quick about, um, just because we're saying that he doesn't have to make things super intricate doesn't mean that it's not in here too. Um,
correct.
and it happens all over this whole album, but I wanted to draw attention to one just because I want I don't think I know you do, but like I don't know that people really understand how many layers there are in some of these lines.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he starts I think it's the second verse with the line "activate the pineal gland."
Mm-hmm.
Um, so just that's what 4 words, right?
So I'm trying to expand the pineal gland.
Yeah,
So it's a
yeah.
rhyme too, expand and gland.
No, that's right. I forgot. I wrote it
Trying
wrong.
to expand the pineal gland. But he says it like a sentence. That's one of the beautiful things about him is that he can rhyme within a rhyme because he knows how to make a sentence, like an actual subject, verb, predicate sentence,
Yeah.
like and make it rhyme.
Hmm. So I'm sorry I misspoke that line, but I want to focus on like the pineal part first. I had to look up what that was. It is the gland in your brain that produces melatonin, which is the thing that keeps you awake or asleep, or like or puts you. People take melatonin to help go to sleep. So um, the expanding it means he's telling you to wake up. All right, so that's one meaning there. Um, Melatonin and melanin are not the same thing, but they sound enough alike um, to for me to think that he's doing that on purpose to
What's the
um,
Latin root? What's the Latin root? Or the Latin root is the Latin root word,
mela, I think. Yeah,
which
yeah,
probably means something of color,
yeah,
coloration.
yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
That's two, right? Um,
Correct.
he also pronounces it though not like pineal, but he pronounces it penal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a rhythmical thing in the line. Obviously, he does it on
Correct.
purpose. But I mean, I mean, he's clearly making a penis joke too. Like, I mean,
Correct.
like,
Correct.
which is some Shakespeare level shit where you throw in like some dick jokes in the middle of something serious just because you can, right?
Right.
He's throwing that in there.
Right.
Um,
Right.
he's also and also part of the joke is he says it's expanding, right? So that's part of the
Right.
joke. Um, and it also winks at the penal system, the prison system,
Right.
especially because the rest of the line is about. I'm going to butcher it badly, but the rest of the line is about um it's a religious thing, like being like life is being a prison and being released from it afterwards, or something to that effect.
It says
Again,
the
I'm
word.
badly butchering that, but
No, no,
I
no.
wanted to point out real quick that even like a short, like 4 or 5 word line has like, what was that, 4, 5 different double, triple meanings to it. Like there's so much layered in here.
And I think you're missing the part too. Okay, so when he's saying "wake up" too,
Hmm.
this is also like, so he's consistent with his themes. On the first song that you ever hear on Illmatic, he said it drops deep like it does in my breath. I never sleep because sleep is the cousin of
Son of death.
death.
Yep.
The themes are the same. This is him. Remember, this is a nostalgic song
Hmm.
referencing
Oh,
a
so
time
is
past.
that too? So that's 5 or 6. I mean,
Yeah, so it's
like
that.
I fully accept that there are things there that I'm not catching, but like
So it's
those are
that.
just the
So
things in a literary sense that I'm catching,
right.
not
So it's
the allusions
no
too.
right, but the most beautiful thing about it, and this is what I mean about the Toni Morrison comparison. Oh, he did that in one sentence.
Yeah, I know. It's like what, 5 words, something like that. Yeah,
One, two, three. I mean, are we counting I'm two and the? Like, are we counting all the words?
sure, why not?
Because if we're counting all the words, it's 7 words.
Okay, but like
So think
that,
about it: six
I
entendres.
spent like what, 5 minutes talking about seven
Well, I mean,
words
just think about it: six entendres or layers of metaphors and literary devices. 7 words.
in one line. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's that top of the line, like, greatest writer ever type of stuff.
Hmm.
Like, no matter what genre, sphere of
Yeah,
writing it is, it's
exactly.
like, if you think it's Shakespeare, then that's Shakespeare level. If you think it's Toni Morrison,
Hmm.
W.E.B. Du Bois, like,
There's
whoever
some of
your
all of
level
that
is,
in there.
yeah, it's some of all of that. Like, whoever it is, you know what I mean? Whoever's your guy or girl as a
Hmm.
writer,
Yep.
hmm right there.
Yeah.
And I think with that, we can probably transition it. And thanks for like bringing that up and pointing that out, because that's what I mean when I said it's like, well, I understood that, but you kind of taught me a couple things too, because it's like I was looking at it from the sexual innuendo reference just to be just
No,
to
that's what I heard the first time too. Like,
well, I immediately actually thought about the penal system. You know what
yep.
I'm saying? Like actual prison industrial complex. You know what
I
I'm
had to look
saying?
up the lyric to get the rest of it, but like but it does, but there's so much going on there
Right.
in such a short amount of time. And to be clear, guys, like there are lines like this all over this record, this album. This is
Yeah.
not clearly the only one. This is just one that happened to jump out to me to talk about. I mean, if we were going to talk about all of them, we'd be here until 3 weeks from now.
Is Old Man one of Neil Young's like, would you say top 5 song? Because like, because I heard a great song and I heard a great writer, but I heard a great record too. I'm like, radio must have loved this whenever it came out. When did this come out? Like 73, 74?
72, yeah.
Yeah, I can hear it.
Yeah, it's that kind of era. No, there's so much to talk about him. I picked him not only because he was a great writer and because obviously the songs are thematically similar, but also because he has longevity in a way that a lot of them didn't too. I mean, he started out as a member of a band called Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. He joined Crosby, Stills and Nash in the late 60s and
Hold on,
was
he's the young. Wow. Okay. See, I didn't know that. See,
yeah.
see, I picked stuff already.
Yep. But he was, and he's now one of the rock and roll OGs. He plays with Pearl Jam. He plays with Springsteen. Like he plays with those guys live now. Um, he did an MTV Unplugged. He did like, so he's done lots of modern day stuff too. So he's been around a long time. Um,
Okay.
so that's another one of those connections now. That he is this song was written, it was released when I looked it up. I think he was like 26 or 7. But I mean, he says he's 24 in the song. Like,
Right.
so,
He wrote for most likely.
so he's in that kind of age now. So, but it's interesting because now he is like one of the old heads too. Like
Well, now when I'm sorry, now I'm a little fascinated. Why did he leave Crosby, Stills, and Nash?
um, he was not a member of that group to start with. Crosby, Stills, and Nash were a group before he joined
Okay.
them.
Okay.
And he they recorded more albums after the Old Man Harvest record. The record's called Harvest. Um, they recorded lots of other records after that too together. So this is just like a solo project.
Okay.
Um, he also played, and that goes through the 80s. He played with another band called Crazy Horse in the 80s and 90s and
I'm familiar with
whatever.
Crazy Horse.
That's Rockin' in the Free World. That's Hey Hey My My. There's lots of other those songs are. He got out his Gibson Les Paul and was like heavy rocking to those. These are folkier, obviously in the earlier days, but the older he's gotten, he has some albums that are like acoustic guitar driven and some that are much heavier too.
Okay. Versatile.
Yeah, he's very versatile. He's one of those guys that's done lots of different things like that, but has actually pulled it off, as
Right.
opposed to like no disrespect to Joni Mitchell, who I love. Like she had like that synth episode in the 80s that are just kind of like, maybe don't do that.
Not for
Like
you.
this is not that it's bad, it's just not your best thing. But um
Not all artists transition and transcend.
yeah.
There's sometimes it's like the level that they're on is all time great for what they do, and
You
there's
don't need to do these other things. Like, I mean,
right. There's space for that.
God
Yeah.
bless you for trying. Knock yourself out. I mean, you've earned the right to do whatever you want to, but like, it's
Right. It's like I never wanted Prodigy of Mobb Deep like to make anything other than hardcore East Coast rap. But if he
mm,
wanted to try other things, totally okay with it. You get what I'm
yeah,
saying? It's just
yeah,
like
sure.
no, give me survival of the fittest and give up the goods. Like it's just
You don't need to be doing this other stuff, but you can. Like, yeah, that's the thing.
but you
Like,
can't.
yeah,
The
it's
artistic and creative license and freedom.
as
Mhm.
a connection and moving forward with the song too. Um, we've also met Graham Nash as from Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. We've met him earlier in this musical series too. He is the man that Joni Mitchell wrote Case of You about. Um, so he's that guy.
Wow. Okay.
So there's a lot of overlaps in a lot of
Okay.
artists' lives. Um,
Hold
so
on. A case he wasn't that kind of a record, if memory serves. It really wasn't.
it was not kind to him, no.
I mean, she
No.
kind of painted him as kind of like emotionally and psychologically abusive,
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
possibly physically abusive.
yeah, it was not the most pleasant relationship for sure. This anyway, Old Man Song comes from Harvest is one of the great folk rock records of the 20th century. Like it's one of the very, very best all the way through. There are songs on there that you might recognize even if you don't know their names. Heart of Gold you might recognize, The Needle and the Damage Done you might recognize. But the whole record is great. And that's another one of those comparisons to KD3 too. Like it's a great record all the way through. There's no skip songs,
Right.
there's no misses on the whole thing.
Right. See, for me, sometimes the most complex things or the most simple things say, the old man, take a look at my life. I'm a lot like you.
Yeah.
Don't be so quick to judge me.
Yeah.
So
And
it
that's exactly
feels
the point.
right. So it immediately gives you that perspective of like, oh, he's talking to somebody with the get off my lawn mentality, which is like literally the antithesis of how Nas is behaving as the elder
Right.
statesman. Right. So as
Right.
soon as that happened, I was like, okay, I see the connection. You know,
Yeah.
he says, I need someone to love me the whole day through.
Hmm.
So that's that young, innocent, still searching
Hmm.
type of thing. Like, not to be funny, grown-ups don't talk that way about love. They don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's still some of that young and some of that innocence, but that's some of the beauty in it. It's like,
Hmm.
there's a vulnerability in that. And so that's where I felt the connection most about the writers. Both of these writers had the ability to be vulnerable without losing their machismo. You know what I mean? Like they don't lose anything in them being vulnerable male songwriters.
Right.
Right. Like the vulnerability is actually like a bonus, not a minus.
Hmm.
That's where the records connected for me as
Hmm.
far as the artist.
Me
It was
too.
the vulnerability and the simplicity of the writing. And that is part of what makes probably Neil Young great, but I know that's part of what makes Nas great is that
Right.
like he can say the simple beautifully and vulnerable and insightful. That's what I was saying on the show last night. It's like, well, the other lyrical guys aren't insightful and vulnerable like
Hmm.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he's writing that Neil Young's writing this song. If he's writing it when he is 24, then it would have been like 1970-ish, probably, which is the um the height of the um 1950s conservative people have and the backlash against the new love hippie Vietnam War protest. I
Mhm.
mean, all of that. So that is sort of what he's addressing in a literal way. I mean,
Mm.
but he the way he tells the story, oh man, take a look at my life. I'm a lot like you.
Is this protest music?
I don't think so. I mean,
Okay.
you can call it that. I mean, and then Neil Young does have protest songs for sure. And Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young do too. But it's I don't think it's intended that way in the same kind of way. But the way he wrote it was one of the reasons I love the song is he wrote it in a way that you can read it as a oh man, you need to chill out kind of way in the 1968, 70, 70, like that kind of era way.
Mhm.
But it also transcends that moment too. Like you don't have to know that piece of information to understand, to know how powerful the message is. And old man,
Um,
take a look at my life. I'm a lot like you. That's you can read that two ways too. You can read it as like, I'm a lot like you are now. Like we both need love, we both need affection, we're all searching for the same things, right? As human beings. But also it's much like Nas's song, is asking him to remember how he was when he was that age too.
mhm.
Um, as young and idealistic.
He's talking to the old man like, you've done things.
Hmm.
Like he doesn't, and this is what I mean, this is great writing. I can see this old man because he gives him character and gives him life. So some of the things that he says makes me feel like this old man might be a little bitter, but also accomplished. Like when he says, 24 and there's so much more. Live alone in paradise. That makes me think of two. Like he's telling him, it's like he's almost telling him, it's like, oh no, no, no. If I'm just like you, well, you've had these moments
Hmm.
of doing these things, and now you have more than that. Let me enjoy this time of doing that. So he's kind of like he's speaking to the accomplishments of the old man, like without saying that the old man is accomplished as well. So he's not talking to an old fool.
Right. He's speaking I think of it as being a pre and post relationship kind of thing. Like the young man's talking about love and family and that kind of thing as this is something that I want, this is something that I'm striving for. And the old man is on the backside of that. I don't know if his wife has left or has died or whatever. Like,
Right,
but they're both alone. Is the
right.
metaphorically
but
speaking.
but it's how he builds the character
Right.
without giving you a lot of information. That's great
Hmm.
writing,
Yeah.
because it's like you can infer some things by what he is letting you know about him and what he's going through.
Hmm.
He's giving you the other character too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the tension between the two characters is where the song comes to life. And you can think of it also as him speaking not just to one specific person, but like to people like that too, because especially in that world. I mean, in all the worlds, I guess now too. There are people who get older and become out of touch with what the youth want and need, and I mean that's one of the reasons I love being a teacher is because it
Keeps it
keeps
young.
me in touch with those kind of things. And um,
Well,
and people ask me about like, are the youth now like so much worse than blah 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 because they watch stupid news and stuff like that? Um,
what do you
no, they're really
what do you
not.
okay.
They're teenagers are teenagers. Like, I mean, they have
Right.
different like ways to get in trouble now than they did before, but like teenagers are interested in love and they're interested in doing things like teenagers are teenagers like that, and that's been a thing forever.
I think that's comforting that you say that, and I'll tell you why. It's like, obviously I have a teenager, and it's like,
Yeah, me too.
right. And it's like, well, the TV's never on, but she's always on her phone and the laptop's always in the bed. And it's like, oh, we didn't have access like that when I was your
Hmm.
age. But technically, the theme is the same, though. You know what I mean? It's like, well, she's holed up in her room because parents suck and we're the worst. And why would we ever know anything or ever be cool? So I'm gonna sit in here and do what I do and talk to my friends on the phone and play my little game. Eat
Hmm.
my food, have my stuff sectioned off, moving on my time, not your time. It's like, no, it's very much how we work.
We were talking on the phone like this instead of like,
Right. But I'm saying they just text and like they're on little like actual games where they can play games with each other and talk to each other
right.
live at the same time. So it's like, no, we would have done that had we could have. Can't you
Oh,
imagine being able
oh,
to
hell
pull up
yeah.
on and like play like the early versions of Madden, like the vet versions of
Yep.
Madden that were on the first PlayStation? Could you imagine if you and I could have just like played Madden together, like in
Just sitting at
Charlotte?
our house. Yeah.
Right. That would have like changed our lives. And so it's like when people look at the kids differently, I'm glad you said that because it's like I don't think the kids are different. I think the technology is.
Hmm.
I think this pandemic changed a lot of things
Yeah.
psychologically and emotionally and not for the better, but the kids
Yeah.
are the same
Yeah.
for the most part.
And but the pandemic changed a lot for everybody. Like it's not just teenagers. Like it's
Yeah,
so.
I just think that this era of kids is growing up and had to deal with the
Hmm.
schooling and like a lot of not being funny, a lot of home issues got exposed probably for a lot of these kids too, things that they probably weren't even aware going on in their own homes, and now
Yeah.
you got to see some things up close and personal maybe you weren't expecting to see, you know.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you what, he has there's just the everyday relatable person
Hmm.
pieces to this song. Like when he says this, and this is what I mean. Well, I think everybody might be able to relate to this on some sort of level.
Hmm.
I've been first and last.
Hmm.
Look at how the time goes past. But I'm all alone at last, rolling home to you.
Hmm.
I find that to be fascinating that he
Such
used the word.
beautiful poetry, man.
It is very poetic. I find the word rolling fascinating.
Why? Tell me about it.
Well, a roll is not something that happens with speed or excitement typically.
Hmm.
When you roll, it's typically at a slow and steady pace, as in not in a rush.
Okay.
But listen to what he said before that. I'm all alone at last, rolling home to you. Like before, he's talking about how much he wants love
Hmm.
and family. But it appears he's acquiring those things. See, I've been first and I've been last. Look at how the time goes past. But I'm all alone at last, rolling home to you. It sounds like he got what he asked for, but he's in an unhappy and unfulfilled relationship because he still speaks to being home. I mean, all alone at last, but rolling, not running, not I can't get weight to you.
Right.
I'll just roll to you. So I think, I mean, and that's just how I inferred it. I inferred that it's like, oh no, he acquired those things that he wanted, that he's speaking to the old man about, but now he has them, and now he's the bitter old man because he
Yeah.
still feels
There
alone.
is some of that for sure that the young man is more bitter or as you don't hear the old man speak, obviously, but um is acquired and that's rolling home to you too. You have to think about who the you is in that sentence. I mean,
Well,
if
that
it
was
if
the
it
next
fits
part I
with the
want.
rest of the song, it has to be the old man, right? Like because he's addressing it to him.
Right.
Which
So, well,
means
but
that he is rolling home to you, not like I'm going to go live with you, but rolling home to you like I'm becoming you.
right. So, but he wrote as if this man was accomplished and had these family and these things, and that's what I'm saying.
Hmm.
He's actually writing, talking about going down the same path. So I think
Right.
he's actually expressing that now he's an old man. Now he knows why the old man is bitter because he's gone down the same path,
Hmm.
and now he's not running to that path. He's rolling to it.
Right. Right. He says,
Right.
"Old man, take a look at my life. What? I'm a lot like you." Right.
You. Right.
Mhm.
And so the way that he frames it simply and kind of takes you through the song, and then
Hmm.
towards the end when you get something like that, and then it goes back into the hook. It's like, oh, beautiful and
Hmm.
simply put. And the melody is dope. I love this song. I do. This
Yeah.
is one of my favorite songs that you've actually given me.
I love. Yeah, I love Neil Young. Neil Young's, as a human being too. I mean, he's a very of that generation of anti-war protest kind of. I mean,
Okay.
you see that in a lot of his stuff too. I want to show you music. I may have to overdub this because, but I want to show you a couple musical things too. This is actually the kind of guitar he had when he was writing these songs too. This is, uh, you can see, I don't know if you can see it. I mean, there are people who watch this that will understand about Martin guitars. You might too, I don't know, but like it's not really that's not really the critical part. This is the Martin D41 from this is made in 1970, built like the guitar itself was built in 1970. Um but this is the kind of I think he had a D42 or 45, which are slightly more expensive versions of this. Um, but a couple of things that I wanted to like draw attention to. There are lots of moments in the song musically too that go from like dissonant to resolving, which kind of mirrors their relationship.
When you say dissonant to resolving, explain that.
Yeah. So dissonance in music anyway tends to mean you're playing two notes that are like right beside each other. So when you're playing a chord, normally you play 1, 3, and 5.
Correct.
Right.
Right.
Right. So those are there's space between those notes in the scale.
Correct.
Right. So when you play them together, it makes a nice ringing sound. There's lots of moments where he's playing notes and singing them too that are like right up against, like kind of like jazz chords almost, like the notes are right
Okay.
beside each other. Like
Okay.
if like on the piano, if you hit like two keys right beside each other,
Right. You hit D
they
and E.
sound kind of
Yeah,
not.
kind of similar, but kind of
Yeah.
quirky. Kind
Yeah.
of it's sound kind of funky. Right.
Yeah. So the chord that he starts with is that.
Oh.
That is four notes actually that are right beside each other. That is C, D, E, E, and F.
So when you say dissonance to resolving, what are you saying? That's what I mean, like the resolving part. What does that mean? Is
Like
that
it goes from notes like this, where those are notes beside each other,
right? Got
and
you.
then it goes to
Got you. Got
right.
you. Yeah.
So it goes from that weird, like
Mm-hmm.
not being on the same wavelength metaphorically to
Hmm.
one where it is. And
Word.
I
Okay.
found this song, like when I first started learning how to play it and sing it, really hard to sing because I mean,
Really?
because the melody is not complicated, but the it took me like 30 or 45 minutes to figure this out. The note that he's starting to sing, like as he starts singing "Old Man, Take a Look at My Life," um, is not in the chord that he's playing. So and that makes it a lot harder to sing because usually when you're singing songs with a guitar or piano or whatever, you're pulling one of the notes from the chords you're playing, right?
Correct. Correct.
And he's not. So it's that makes it much more difficult to find the note to start with. And if you can't find the note to start with, then it's harder to move
I
forward
think
with the
that's
melody.
intentional. Is that intentional?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
so
usually, because you don't, because usually that's kind of like that's like removing a bass line or a snare
yeah,
or something in a sense. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Right. Right.
And and Nas does this actually on I don't know if he does it on I don't think he does it on this song, but there are songs on this album that where he's doing it a cappella or there's no beat behind it for a while and then the beat drops in.
Right. Well, I mean, well, this is what well, he has a couple moments on the album too where he's not rapping to the like actual like bass line either.
Okay.
Like where it's hard to explain it like in this format.
Yeah, where you can't hear the things as they go.
Where we can't hear the things as they go, but the really great rappers can rap to the snares and the hi-hats too.
Mm.
Like where it's like, well, they don't just drop necessarily where the bass line drops. Like
Mm-hmm.
Rakim and Nas are probably best at it because they come from musical families and have been
Right.
musicians themselves, where they can actually use their voices and their flow and their delivery, where it kind of like matches the hi hat and the speed of the hi hat or the snare, not the bass line. Like the hi hat go
Right.
like they'll rhyme to that. The bass line's going boom, boom. No, they're rhyming and you got to catch it. And like on KD3, he actually has a moment where it's like, no, he's riding the bass line, and then he just totally changes his flow. And it's like, hold on, what the fuck is he rapping to? It's like, oh shit, he's rapping to the snares and the hi-hats.
See that's the thing. That's one of the reasons I love having these conversations because that's not something that I would ever notice. I can hear him like changing up the flow, but I don't know like what he's
Right.
doing.
You have to understand
the
that it's just
intricate
like
musicality of it.
But it's just like you're talking about with the chord, though. It's like, well, usually when the beat switches and you get a new bass line, you rap to the new bass line, not the hi-hat or the snare. Kind of like how you're saying, well, we usually don't sing out of the chord. And part of what made finding the song hard, the part of what is going to make it hard to imitate that flow. It's like, oh, well, if you try to repeat and rap what Nas just did, you know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
It's like, oh, well, you need to learn how to catch the hi hat and snare,
It's
not just
hard, man.
and
Yeah.
it's hard, right? So on the same way that it's like it was hard for Neil Young to probably like format this
Hmm.
song. Well,
Yeah.
that's what a great rapper, Nas in this case, can do on record too. Is like go off script of what normally gets done and go
Hmm.
get the job done. Because that's
Right.
essentially what it is. It's like it's going off script of the musicality and the formation of it to go get the job done. And it's that, and that's the experimentation that slowly always pushes music and culture forward, in my opinion.
Yeah. And the thing that I love, or one of the other things that I love about both of those things, the thing you just said and the thing that I just showed you on the guitar, is that it functions as a metaphor too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because both of the songs are about tension between generations. You can kind of hear it sort of as the old man speaking to the young man, even though he's not old. We know from our lives that, and from what you just narrated about your own daughter, actually, that the young people always think the old people are like out of touch or whatever, even if they
Right.
are cool and even if they
And I'm
are
the,
whatever.
and I'm the cool dad with 21 and 22-year-old friends. My daughter's 15, 16, and I'm still out of touch. You know
Right,
what I mean?
exactly. And my 13-year-old treats me the same way too. Like, it's not that's just a
Perfect.
normal part of being a
Perfectly.
teenager. The point is that they're both of the songs musically, the way he's catching the beat, the way in an unorthodox way, and the way Neil Young's like singing along to these chords, that they both show dissonance. They show things that aren't done normally, or kind of that sound out of tune, sort of, kind of, if you don't know what you're listening to. And then they're
Right.
being resolved back to things that you recognize as well. And that's kind of a metaphor for those relationships. We're assuming from how Nas tells his story that he talks about the Bentleys, and he was like one of the first ones to have a Bentley in New York or whatever.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
and
He
he's, hold
actually
on, let me
listed
say,
it.
I mean, I don't want to quote him
He,
directly.
he actually
Um,
listed it in order. I think he said Tyson,
mhm,
Puff, Stout, and then me. I
something
might
like
have
that.
missed somebody.
Yeah, there were five. He was the fifth on
Yeah,
that list.
Mike.
I don't know who,
No,
but
it's Mike.
he says we didn't know we were living hazardous, right?
Right.
Like
It's that.
like
Yeah.
so he's also acknowledging the fact that as a young man he would have thought almost 50-year-old man was talking out of his ass, and then now he's like recounting some of the times that people have told him things, and he's realizing now that he's older the value in what he has been
Well,
told.
also too. Well, see, part of why I love that too is that there's reality in that, and there's hyperbole in that. When he's saying I'm the fifth guy with the Bentley, is well, you're talking about in the black entertainment
Right,
sphere
exactly.
circle. There were other blacks who had that Bentley. You get what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
for
But
sure.
I get what he's saying. He's saying like coming from where we're from, like
Hmm.
Mike Tyson was the first guy we saw with a Bentley. Kedar, you know who Kedar is, right?
I don't know who that is or Stout. I don't know who the other two are, obviously, but
Okay, so Steve Stout is the one that managed Track Masters,
okay.
and used to manage Jay too. He's one of hip hop's biggest influencers. He's responsible for
Hmm.
"It Was Written," which is
Okay.
Nas' biggest selling album.
Okay.
So, but he's done some other things. Matter of fact, Stout has a position with the New York Knicks now.
Okay.
He's like head of marketing and branding or something for the New York Knicks now, actually. So Stout's pretty big. Kedar Massenberg is the person that's responsible for bringing out Erica Badu, if I'm not mistaken. That would
Okay.
probably be his biggest claim to fame that you would know him of, but he
Okay.
was a big time music exec. I'm not sure what Kedar is
Hmm.
doing now. So it's like all these guys, it's either like it was the heavyweight, she's pretty much saying it was heavyweight champ, three black execs, and then me, the multi-platinum rapper. You know what I
Hmm.
mean?
Right.
So he's kind of giving you that hood dreams contextualization of it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's like, oh, well, people in Brooklyn and Queens, the only people we seen driving through a Bentley's was Mike Tyson. Well, then Puff got a Bentley. Or I'm sorry, he said Tyson, then Kedar, then Puff, then Stout, and then me.
Hmm.
You know? So he's like, that's that hood hyperbole where it's like, oh, well, if you seen a guy in a Bentley in Brooklyn and Queens, it could only have been like one of five guys around that time. You
Hmm.
know? Other guys driving this car and coming up in the Brooklyn and Queens. You feel me?
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So he's kind of contextualizing some of the environment for you when he says that.
Hmm. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, these were great songs and great pairings. And I really like I'm gonna have to look into Neil Young more. I was really impressed with
Yeah,
the record.
he's a super talented songwriter.
Oh, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, like that's what I'm saying is like, and you probably know this even more than I do as an English teacher. I mean, when somebody's a great writer, you can usually tell it instantly.
Yeah.
Like you usually know, like I mean, not to be funny, you know, usually after that first writing assignment,
Oh yeah.
which one of your writers in the class are gifted, don't you?
Yeah.
Usually
Yeah.
after the first thing they write, you're like, this one can write.
Yeah.
Like right. It's like, and I'm not going to have to help them with much, but navigating their vision and some grammatical and
Right.
some
Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
then there are
You
other
have
people
to
that like,
push them on a different kind of level. Like that they are they're not going to different kids need different things, obviously. And
right,
but yeah, you can see the ones who have, I mean, I believe all writers can get better, obviously, but there's some that have an ear for it. Just like somebody's like I used to play in a band with somebody who could just like pick up basically any stringed instrument and play it. I'm like, dude, come on. Like how do you do that? Like so, and it's that kind of thing. There are people who can just do that. And I mean it's hours of practice before that, obviously, but like there's some people who have gifts and
no, I knew a guy like that, Andrew. We didn't rap like together, but you know, I've been
mhm,
in some ciphers with him before. We were close. His group member I was close to and stuff, but as an MC, Andrew, I mean, at the drop of a dime, he could pick up and go on a Black Thought and Nas level, and I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Like, did it in my house plenty of times. Used to go see him perform live and stuff, but just like had it and was so amazing. I'm like, man, if somebody don't just like hand this guy a record deal, you know what I mean? That's
mhm,
all I would be thinking to myself. And I was really damn gifted in my own right, and I felt that way about him. You know what I mean? He
yeah,
was older than me, and he's one of the people that like helped school me. It's super talented like that. It's like, oh no, he could rhyme off anything about anything at the drop of a dime. You'd be like, what you want to rhyme about today? He's like, you know, your last rhyme need to be your best rhyme, right? Watch, let me show you. And he just start rapping. Be like, oh man, like this guy crazy. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
There are
yeah,
people like that that like never make the major leagues, quote unquote.
mhm,
They're just as talented as like
yeah,
those guys. It's like I've been around some of those people. Some people consider me to be somewhat of that person. For people that have heard me, like, yeah, I would have made it. I think you would have made it too. I think life just happened, music changed, you know, all that
yeah,
shit. Yeah,
mm,
but yeah, a
mm,
great
mm,
episode, great show.
yeah. I like this.